Shackled like Hannibal Lecter, given the wrong medication on purpose, kept behind a metal door with a slot for a food tray. Remember those crazy defense attorneys who said their client Richard Allen was being tormented by odious prison guards? Well, maybe they're not so crazy after all. In 2017, two young girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, ages 13 and 14, were murdered in Delphi, Indiana. Years later, authorities arrested Richard Allen and charged him with the murders. He's in prison, and I said that intentionally, prison, not jail, awaiting his trial. This past week, his attorneys filed a motion so astounding, I had to do an extra video to tell you about it. A little bit of background you need to know. Up until this fall, Richard Allen was being represented by two attorneys, Andrew Baldwin and Bradley Rosie. Richard Allen was declared indigent, which means he couldn't afford to pay an attorney himself. So these attorneys were appointed to represent him. Now, these two attorneys, Baldwin and Rosie, filed a motion to have their client transferred out of the prison where he was being held, saying that he was being kept in conditions akin to that of a prisoner of war. Judge Gull, the judge in the case, denied their request. She said Richard Allen was being treated, quote, more favorably than other prisoners. For that and other reasons, Judge Gull more or less forced Baldwin and Rosie to resign. When they resisted, she removed them both from the case anyway, and she appointed two brand new lawyers. Part of the reason, she said, was that they didn't have any real basis, Baldwin and Rosie didn't, for that claim that Richard Allen was being kept in inhumane prison conditions. In a secret in-chambers hearing that has since been made public, the judge told the attorneys, your pleadings on the safekeeping order contain inaccuracies and falsehoods. That was proven in the hearing we conducted in June. The evidence presented by the state clearly demonstrated the falsity of your claims, and that was very troubling to me. Except that now it is looking more and more like something is terribly wrong with Richard Allen's prison conditions. If you would, hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. And if legal cases in the news interest you, please subscribe. The new replacement lawyers filed by Judge Gull have filed a brand new motion talking about, and you guessed it, Richard Allen's inhumane prison conditions. And this time, it's not filed by the same two attorneys. It's by two brand new lawyers appointed by Judge Gull herself. Today, we're going to take a look at this motion. Now, you know I am big into highlighting things and just reading the key parts to minimize the time commitment for you. But I started doing that with this motion, and it was so eyebrow-raising, just so astonishing, that I found I was basically highlighting every word. I kept thinking, oh, they're going to hear about this, and I can't miss telling them that. So basically, I was looking at nothing but a yellow page, which, of course, defeats the entire point of highlighting. So the bottom line is you don't want to miss any of this. It's not too long, so we're going to read and discuss the whole thing, starting with the argument. Richard Allen is currently being held in pretrial detention at the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, a maximum security state prison. After visiting with Mr. Allen at both the Westville Correctional Facility and the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, it is counsel's belief that, one, Mr. Allen is not being treated similar to other pretrial detainees being held in county jails, and two, pretrial incarceration at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility will seriously, if not fatally, impact counsel's ability to effectively represent Mr. Allen due to the distance of travel and visitation conditions. And then the facts. On November 3rd, 2022, the state of Indiana filed a motion on behalf of the sheriff of Carroll County asking the court to transfer Richard Allen to the custody of the Department of Corrections, claiming that due to this being a high-profile case, the Carroll County sheriff could not adequately provide Mr. Allen with necessary security or other needs at the Carroll County Jail. Judge Diner, or Diener, I don't know how to say it, without holding an evidentiary hearing on the merits, granted the state's motion and approved Richard Allen's transfer to the Department of Corrections, then recused himself from the case that same day. Mr. Allen had no opportunity to object to this transfer, and no one appeared to consider how this might negatively impact Mr. Allen's defense. Now, normally, let's say this from the get-go, prisoners who have not yet been tried, people who are incarcerated but they haven't been tried, they're held in a jail. If they are convicted, they get moved to prison. But Richard Allen is being held in prison even though he has not yet been convicted. So that's unusual. And his attorneys are saying this is not by his choice. This is something the state asked for. Okay, let's keep reading. On April 5th, 2023, Mr. Allen's former counsel filed an emergency motion to modify safekeeping order, essentially a motion to transfer Mr. Allen to a county jail. I have reviewed counsel's motion, and although I lack personal knowledge to vouch for all of the allegations made, as Mr. Allen's present counsel, I believe it to be a meritorious motion. And based upon 25 years of practicing law, I agree that Mr. Allen is not being treated similar to other pretrial detainees in county jails, and that his pretrial incarceration at a distant state prison severely impacts counsel's ability to effectively communicate with Mr. Allen and effectively represent him. I would incorporate the legal arguments made by prior counsel and add that Mr. Allen's distance from present counsel and the conditions during visitation negatively impact counsel's ability to effectively represent Mr. Allen. So this is huge, I think, because Judge Gull said that the claims that the first two attorneys were making were untrue. I read that to you. She said their motion contained, quote, inaccuracies and falsehoods. She said she was troubled by, quote, the falsity of your claims. And here we are with two new lawyers appointed by Judge Gull. And as you're about to see, they're making even bigger, more astonishing claims than the first two attorneys were. So let's keep reading. On April 14, 2023, this court denied prior counsel's motion, and Mr. Allen remains in the custody of the Department of Corrections. On April 28, 2023, this court received a letter written by an inmate at Westville Correctional Facility alleging that Mr. Allen was being abused and mistreated. Having a letter from another inmate strikes me as pretty unusual. What does the inmate gain by stepping out and saying that the guards, the same guards who are in charge of him, are abusing Richard Allen? But Judge Gull did not change any of the rulings as a result of this communication from the other inmate. On September 18th, 2023, prior counsel filed a motion for a Franks hearing in support of their previously filed motion to suppress. Prior counsel included a 136-page memorandum with 126 confidential exhibits. The memorandum and exhibits, among other things, alleged prison guards at Westville Correctional Facility were allowed to wear patches on their official uniforms supporting Odinism, and that crime scene photos suggested a potential connection to Odinism, a Nordic religion and or cult that has been associated both in the prison system and in society in general with white supremacy. After reviewing crime scene photos and visiting Mr. Allen at Westville Correctional Facility, present counsel believes these claims have merit and that pretrial incarceration within the state prison system negatively impacts Mr. Allen's rights, in addition to counsel's ability to effectively represent him. Now, we went in detail through some of these Odinism claims in a video a month or so ago. I'll link to that and you can watch that video. Now, these Odinist claims, when I first read them, sound so far-fetched that a white supremacy cult based on an ancient Norse god ritualistically killed Abby and Libby, and now they're pinning the crime on Richard Allen, random person who happened to walk through the park that day. The first attorneys claimed that guards who were members of the Odinists were put in charge of Richard Allen in the prison, and that those guards were even wearing Odinist patches. Personally, when I first read that about the Odinist patches, my thought was, that is just ridiculous. No one is going to buy that. That could not possibly be true. But then the state admitted that the guards guarding Richard Allen were actually wearing Odinist patches. And now, to astonish me even further, the two new attorneys say these claims have merits on both points, that there's evidence that the Odenists were involved in the murders and that the prison guards in charge of Richard Allen are also Odenists. You, honestly, you could just knock me over with a feather. 4 defense attorneys are putting their reputations on the line with such unlikely claims, which inclines me to think this is true. You'd be hard pressed to get attorneys to do this if it weren't really important and really true. On October 27, 2023, this court appointed attorneys Robert C. Scrimmin and William Librato to represent Richard Allen. Attorneys Scrimmin and Librato both reside and maintain primary offices in Fort Wayne, Allen County, Indiana. Fort Wayne is approximately 106 miles from Westville Correctional Facility and a 2-hour drive. Fort Wayne is approximately 233 miles from Wabash Correctional Facility and approximately a 3.5-hour drive without stops. Counsel's most recent visit to Mr. Allen at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility was a 10-hour day. Now, this is probably the best argument that Richard Allen's attorneys make, and the reason is just practical. This is an argument that would be very easy for the judge to accept, grab onto, rule on that. The prison's a long distance away from the attorney, so it's hard for them to meet with him. The judge doesn't have to buy into any conspiracy theories. The judge can just grant the motion for no reason other than where the prison's located. On November 19, 2023, counsel visited with Mr. Allen at Westville Correctional Facility. The visit was an arduous process which included lengthy travel, complicated and protracted prison security procedures, and difficult visitation conditions. Throughout our legal consultation, Mr. Allen remained uncomfortably and unnecessarily shackled and chained in a manner resembling Hannibal Lecter, while guards watched through glass panels and the door ajar. Mr. Allen clearly appeared intimidated by the guards and was hesitant to speak freely with counsel. Well, I mean, this is just a wild description. And what's so interesting is how very much like what the first set of lawyers said was happening. I mean, it looks like they weren't crazy. They weren't troublemakers, because the new attorneys think the exact same thing. Richard Allen is being kept in bizarre and horrendous conditions. All right, we'll keep reading. Although none of the prison guards were wearing patches in support of Odenism, one of the guards did have a symbolic face tattoo of Odin's spear and multiple hand and finger tattoos emblematic of Odenism and or Norse mythology. This same prison guard had a public Facebook account that also displayed the same tattoos, in addition to a necklace with Thor's hammer inscribed with the letters BRSRCR, an acronym for Berserker, which is a very specific type of Norse battle axe and the name given to warriors fighting in honor of Odin. Other photos displayed 3 interlocking triangles, another symbol associated with Odinism. Now, the state had said that the guards would no longer wear Odinist patches, but of course, it's pretty hard to remove a facial tattoo. I still find it hard to believe this. This is so crazy. But we have a lot of corroboration by now of the connection between Richard Allen's guards and Odinism. Mr. Allen stated that Westville guards were intimidating and reluctant to provide him with shower and recreational access because it caused them extra work. And as a result, he often simply remained in his cell and went without recreational time or a shower to keep the peace. Now, this part's a little harder to evaluate. I mean, is this really aimed at Richard Allen, or are the guards just avoiding work in general? Are they really refusing to give Richard Allen things like a shower, or is he just sort of interpreting their reactions to mean that they want him not to do that because it's going to cause him more work? It's just a little hard to know what that means. On 12/23, counsel visited Mr. Allen at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, where Mr. Allen had recently been moved without consulting counsel. The round-trip drive and visit took over 10 hours to complete. Access to the prison once again took nearly an hour, and several gates had to be manually cranked open as there was a power outage in a portion of the prison and doors could not be opened. Prison staff indicated they did not have any type of visitation rooms for counsel to use because they, quote, were not equipped for such matters. but had fashioned a visitation room in some sort of prep kitchen within the prison housing unit. Counsel was informed the visitation would be monitored by video camera. Counsel was taken to Mr. Allen, who was locked in a prison cell located within the kitchen. The cell appeared to be designed as a place to feed a prisoner. The cell had a solid iron door with a small hinged iron flap, approximately 8 inches high, that opened just far enough to slide a food tray through. This iron flap was left open, and it was through this small opening that we were allowed to see Mr. Allen and speak with him. A folding table was set up approximately 6 feet from the cell door with 3 chairs on the far side of the table. We were instructed to sit in the chairs and not to approach Mr. Allen or come within 6 feet of the cell door. This arrangement made it impossible to show Mr. Allen any videos or documents or discuss the case with him without raising our voices and almost shouting. This is just bizarre. First of all, I find it really strange that the prison does not have any, as they say, facilities for the prisoners to meet with attorneys. I mean, I get that this is a prison, so most of the people in a prison have already been convicted. So they don't have as much need to meet with their attorneys as someone who's in jail and who has not been convicted yet. But even people in prisons need to meet with their attorneys sometimes. Prisoners who have been convicted might have an appeal, for example, and they might have other cases that are pending. I mean, think Alec Murdaugh, right? He was convicted of the murders, but then he also had a bunch of financial crimes cases that were still pending. So how does a prison not have places for prisoners to meet with attorneys? I find that bizarre. And speaking of bizarre, I'm just speechless about the setup. Lawyers forced to sit at a table 6 feet from the door of the prison cell. The prisoner behind a solid metal door with a slot for a food tray. I mean, it sounds more like a movie set than something in real life. And the attorney thinks the same. Here's what he writes. In 25 years of practicing law in 5 states, including representing numerous defendants charged with murder, I have never had to conduct an in-custody legal consultation in this fashion. The prison's visitation arrangement created an environment wherein effectively representing Mr. Allen was a fiction. Mr. Allen stated that in the 2 weeks that he had been at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, he had not received or even been offered any recreational time, and he believed he had taken 1, possibly 2 showers, and he had not been allowed outside in the prison yard, although other inmates enjoyed outdoor recreation. The attorney is staking his own reputation. Did you hear the way he phrased that? He's saying, I've been practicing 25 years. I've never seen this. He's staking his reputation on this being out of the norm. Now, given how much hot water the prior 2 attorneys got into, I think it says something powerful that this attorney believes this so strongly, he's now staking his reputation on it. He's saying he's never seen anything like it and that it's aimed at Richard Allen. It's not just that Indiana in general has barbaric prisons. This is about intimidating Richard Allen, is what he's saying. And he's going to wind up with some rousing comments. In 25 years of practicing law, I have never had to conduct an in-custody legal visit in the manner I have with Mr. Allen. I routinely conduct legal visits within the jails in Allen, Adams, Huntington, Randolph, and Wells counties, including consultations with numerous clients charged with murder. There is never a guard present during the consultation, and there is never audio or video equipment recording the visit. My clients are never shackled, handcuffed, or chained during visits. These are clearly state prison policies, not county jail policies. I'm often able to simply sit at a table with my client and have a conversation. But at the very least, I'm able to sit directly across from my client and speak through a large plexiglass partition where we can view videos and documents. County jails routinely, dare I say daily, have lawyers visiting pretrial detainees. And as such, county jails have rooms specifically designed for attorney visits. County jails also have a streamlined access protocol for defense attorneys that often takes no more than a minute or 2, as opposed to an hour, and laptops, phones, and tablets are routinely allowed during attorney visits with no special requests. County jail visits with clients can even be set up the same day. Clients in county jails are extremely accessible, and multiple visits can be quickly and efficiently made when legal issues arise. Based upon counsel's observations and experience, Mr. Allen is not being treated similar to other pretrial detainees being held in county jails. However, even if this court were to find that Mr. Allen's pretrial treatment within the state prison system does not, in itself, justify moving him to a county jail, evidence is absolutely overwhelming that pretrial detainment at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility will seriously, if not fatally, impact counsel's ability to effectively represent Mr. Allen due to the sheer distance of travel and the unworkable visitation conditions. Counsel for Mr. Allen respectfully requests that he be transferred to either the Allen County Jail or the Adams County Jail. Now, when they have two sets of attorneys making these allegations, four lawyers and an investigator, we're about to see that affidavit in just a minute, I don't think the court has any choice but to take it seriously. The court can't just say, I don't believe it, or there's no evidence that this is happening. This is too much information from sources not expected to give this information. So I think it's really important. I hope the court will pay attention to it. Now, at the same time that they filed this motion, the defense attorneys filed an affidavit, and I'm going to take a look at that. The affidavit, I think, is actually from an investigator who was working with them and who accompanied the lawyers to this most recent visit. It's wild, too, and you're definitely going to want to hear about it. On 11/19/23, I accompanied attorneys Robert Scrimmin and William Labrato to the Westville Correctional Facility to meet with Richard Allen. After arrival at the facility, it took approximately an hour to clear security and reach Mr. Allen, which included riding in a shuttle van to an interior wing of the prison. We met with Mr. Allen in a room lined with windows where prison guards could plainly observe the, quote, confidential consultation. The door to the room was left ajar and could not be closed, as the door's deadbolt was left protruding from the door, preventing it from closing. Prison guards remained posted just outside the door where they could look through the windows. Mr. Allen appeared apprehensive to speak freely with attorneys Scrimmin and Labrato. Now, think about what's happening here, because these attorneys are trying to meet with their client who has not been convicted of murder. And they're saying they can't talk with him confidentially because the door is being left partly open and prison guards are standing around and staring at them. Richard Allen was brought to the room wearing ankle shackles, handcuffs, and a wide leather belt fitted with metal O-rings. The ankle shackles and handcuffs were both secured to the waist belt by short chains, which restricted Mr. Allen's every move and gave him the appearance of Hannibal Lecter. His hands were cuffed together such that the back of his hands were together, with one palm facing down and one palm facing up. Mr. Allen appeared visibly uncomfortable, with his arms twisted at the elbow such that the backs of his hands could be secured facing each other in the handcuffs. Mr. Allen remained shackled and chained in this fashion for the entire visit. It's hard to even know what to say about this because it's just bizarre. They're in a maximum security prison with a guard standing outside. So is this really necessary? Again, they are making it seem like this is aimed at Richard Allen specifically, and that it includes how he's being treated physically, not just mental abuse. This is physical abuse, according to what they're saying. Let's keep reading. One of the prison guards who stood outside the door, later identified as Sergeant Randy Jones, displayed a face tattoo of Odin's spear under his right eye and numerous tattoos on his arms, hands, and fingers that resembled Nordic and or Odinist symbols. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, a little easier to read. I later located a Facebook profile of Randy Jones, including a photo of Sergeant Jones with the same face tattoo of Odin's spear and wearing a necklace with a Thor's hammer charm, another symbol associated with Odinism. The hammer necklace worn by Sergeant Jones was inscribed with the letters BRSRCR, which is an acronym for Berserker. A berserker is a type of Nordic battle axe and a term used to describe warriors fighting with Odin. Other photos displayed 3 interlocking triangles, another symbol associated with Odinism. Research has revealed that Odinism has been linked to white supremacy in the prison system. Symbols and rituals associated with Odinism also appear to be present in crime scene photos taken in the present case. again, suggesting that they plan to make the same arguments about the crime that the prior attorneys did, not just about the guards regarding Richard Allen, but that the murders were actually by Odinist, that they were not done by Richard Allen, but they were part of some kind of ritual killing done by Odinist, who are now framing Richard Allen for what they did. And I want to show you the photographs because they attached some pictures of the cheek tattoo, the necklace that was being worn, the symbol on the Facebook page, and then they wanted to show, I suppose, the hammer that they were talking about. Mr. Allen stated that he was once shot with a taser through a closed and locked prison cell door. Wow. Why? You just have to wonder why. I mean, what need would there be for that if he's behind a locked cell door? But of course, the only evidence of this is what Richard Allen said. On the other hand, he's the only person who probably could testify in his behalf about this. So it's hard to know whether that's true or not, but that is a crazy accusation. Mr. Allen stated that when it was time for him to take a shower or have recreation time, the guards would ask him if he wanted a shower or recreation, but they would slowly shake their heads from side to side, indicating that his response should be no, because it was an inconvenience for the guards to assist with these basic amenities. This is the kind of thing that's really hard to assess. Maybe Richard Allen's just overinterpreting. Maybe he just needs to ignore those subtle messages from the guard. Maybe they would go ahead and give it to him if he wanted. Does it rise to the level of Richard Allen being denied basic cleanliness, basic exercise? Really hard to tell, frankly. Mr. Allen stated that since arriving at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, he had been kept in solitary confinement, had not had any recreational time, and had not been allowed outside, and that he had no window. Although he had been there nearly 2 weeks, he believed he had taken 1, perhaps 2 showers. He appeared disoriented to date or time. Prison officials confirmed that Mr. Allen had not been taken out for recreational time, claiming it was a safety issue for Suicide Watch. Mr. Allen expressed concern that he was receiving medications and that he was unsure what he was being given or why, as he had not recently seen a physician. He also stated that whatever medication he receives, he does not always get the same type or number or size or color of pills. This is absolutely crazy stuff. And I would dismiss a lot of this just out of hand. It's not very likely to be true, except for the fact that this is now 2 sets of attorneys who have said very similar things. The judge thought the first set just had to be off base, arguing things that made no sense. So she handpicked and hand appointed a new set of attorneys. And you assume the judge chose this new set because she thought they were not crazy. These new attorneys think the same thing. Now, one thing I do want to note, the place where Richard Allen is incarcerated, that's a really small issue compared to the question of whether he's convicted of a double murder. So I am sure that some people will question the timing of this. Richard Allen's new attorneys filed this motion for transfer right before the Supreme Court is going to take up the question of whether or not the old attorney should be reappointed back to the case. So some people are going to figure that the new attorneys filed this motion to convince everyone that they're just as committed as the first set, when in reality, they're part of a big conspiracy. Personally, I just don't think that. I mean, ultimately, every conspiracy has to have a bottom. There has to be somebody not in on the conspiracy, or it's not a conspiracy. And these attorneys did not just argue the Odinism issue with respect to the guards. They could have just filed a motion to transfer saying this prison is far away from us, or just this prison is far away from us and the guards have a tattoo that's Odinist. That would have been one argument, but they also state in there that there were Odinist symbols at the scene of the murder, as if they intend to argue that at trial, just as the prior lawyers obviously intended to do. But of course, time will tell. So like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.